He was arrested for a murder he didn't commit. The truth will shock you, he didn't kill anyone, but the police didn't care. Malik Johnson's life changed in a single night. At 29, he wasn't rich or famous, just a hard-working man chasing a dream. He played his guitar at small clubs, hoping that one day someone would notice his music. But on a rainy evening, while walking home from a gig, he passed by a crime scene he didn't even know existed. Sirens wailed in the distance, police lights flashed like lightning, but Malik kept his head down. He had no idea that just 2 blocks away, a man had been murdered, and somehow he would be blamed. He didn't kill anyone, but the police didn't care. Those words would later define Malik Johnson's life. But on that rainy Thursday night, he had no idea how much trouble was about to find him. Malik was 29, tall but lean, with calloused fingers that told the story of a man who'd spent most of his life playing guitar rather than shaking hands in an office. He worked odd jobs during the day, moving furniture, delivering packages, fixing things for neighbors, for his small one-bedroom apartment. At night, he turned into something else entirely, a musician chasing a dream. That evening, he had played at the Blue Note, a small downtown club with peeling posters on the walls and a dim neon sign that buzzed when it rained. The pay wasn't much, just enough to cover a late-night meal and bus fare home, but for Malik, it was never about the money. When he finished his last song, a slow, soulful piece his late father used to hump, people actually clapped. Some even asked his name. For Malik, that was rare. He wasn't famous, not even close, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe things were starting to change. He smiled to himself, thinking about how he would tell his mother in the morning that people actually remembered his lyrics. After packing his guitar into its worn black case, Malik stepped outside. The city smelled of wet asphalt and cheap fast food. A soft drizzle turned the streets shiny, reflecting the red and yellow glow of traffic lights like paint smeared on glass. In the distance, a bus hissed to a stop, and a lone taxi passed. Splashing water from the curb, he checked his phone. 107 a.m. He could have called a cab, but money was tight, and the bus stop wasn't far. He decided to walk. The streets were mostly empty now, except for a couple arguing under an umbrella and a man pushing a shopping cart filled with cans. A stray dog trotted past, its fur soaked, shaking water onto the sidewalk. Malik adjusted his hood and kept going. What Malik didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that just 2 blocks away, in an upscale part of town he rarely visited, chaos was erupting. A wealthy businessman had been attacked, stabbed in the chest in an alley. Neighbors had heard screams. Sirens blared as police cars sped through the streets like wolves on the hunt. Radios crackled with sharp voices, and a helicopter hovered, its spotlight searching rooftops. But Malik knew none of that. He just walked, head down, hoodie up to protect against the rain, guitar case over his shoulder. Every step splashed water onto his worn sneakers. He hummed a tune softly to himself, unaware that in mere minutes that quiet melody would be drowned out by chaos. He passed shuttered shops, their security gates rattling in the wind, and glanced at his reflection in a darkened window. He looked tired, but calm, at least for now. In the distance, blue and red lights flickered like an angry storm. Malik glanced up, but kept moving. He didn't want trouble. Growing up, he had learned to avoid police attention at all costs. Even when he was a kid, his mum would say, "If you see sirens, go the other way, baby. Don't get involved. Just keep walking." So that's what he did. A police car zoomed past him, tires spraying water onto the sidewalk. Another followed. Malik slowed down, uneasy. He looked over his shoulder and saw a group of officers putting up yellow tape around an alleyway. He couldn't see what was inside, but he heard someone crying, heard a radio crackle. Suspect may still be in the area. Black male, mid to late 20s, dark clothing, possibly armed. Malik froze for a second. That could have been describing anyone, including him. He felt his heart beat faster. Don't look suspicious, he told himself. Just keep walking. But now every movement felt heavier, slower, more noticeable. He shoved his hands into his pockets, but then quickly took them out. He adjusted his guitar case. He tried to walk casually, but what does casual even look like when you know someone might be watching you? A voice yelled in the distance. He couldn't make out the words. Tires screeched somewhere behind him. Malik picked up the pace. His apartment was only 10 more minutes away. 10 minutes and he'd be safe, warm, and asleep. He pictured himself locking the door, placing his guitar gently by the couch, and finally taking off his soaked hoodie. That thought was the only thing keeping him calm. Yet with every block, the sirens seemed louder, closer. Helicopter blades chopped the night sky. Shadows danced on the walls of buildings. Somewhere, a dog barked, startled by the noise. Malik's chest tightened. He had done nothing wrong, but for some reason, he felt hunted. The feeling made his hands tremble slightly, and he tightened his grip on the guitar case just to feel grounded. Malik didn't know it, but at that exact moment, a frightened older man who had seen almost nothing in the chaos, was telling the police he'd spotted a tall black man in a hoodie carrying something long near the crime scene. That vague description would soon become Malik's nightmare. But for now, Malik just kept moving, unaware that every step he took was drawing him deeper into danger. His world was about to change forever, though he still believed he was just walking home like any other night. The morning sun had barely begun to cast its pale light over the city when a sudden, thunderous pounding shook the door of Malik Johnson's small apartment. "Police, open up, now," a commanding voice roared from the other side. Malik jolted, upright from his bed, heart pounding wildly as adrenaline surged through his veins. Who could it be at this hour? What was happening? His thoughts raced as the heavy knocking continued, urgent and relentless. Before he could even reach the door, it burst open with a violent crash. 3 officers in dark uniforms and heavy boots stormed inside, their faces hard and unyielding. "Get down, hands behind your head, move," one yelled, his voice sharp as a whip. Malik's body froze for a moment, shock anchoring him in place. Then, instinctively, he dropped down onto the cold wooden floor, trembling, his hands raised in surrender. "What's going on? Why are you here?" Malik's voice shook as he looked up at the officers, eyes wide with confusion and fear. One of the officers crouched beside him, flashing a silver badge. "Malik Johnson, you're under arrest for the murder of Jacob Reynolds." The words slammed into Malik like a fist. Murder him. That had to be a mistake. Jacob Reynolds, wealthy businessman he didn't even know was dead, and they thought he did it. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Malik stammered, voice cracking. "I wasn't near that place last night. I was at the Blue Note Club playing music." But the officers ignored his protests. They cuffed his hands tightly and hauled him to his feet. As they marched him down the hallway, Malik caught glimpses of his neighbors peeking through their doors and windows, whispering words he couldn't hear but knew were unkind. The ride to the police station was silent, except for the low hum of the car engine and the occasional crackle from the radio. Malik stared out the window at the city passing by his city, feeling more lost and alone than ever before. At the station, harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Malik was led into a small interrogation room. The air smelled cold and sterile. A single metal table and 2 chairs sat in the center, casting long shadows on the grimy floor. The door slammed shut behind him, sealing him inside. 2 detectives entered, their faces unreadable. One was tall, with sharp features, the other younger, his eyes cold and calculating. They sat across from Malik, pushing a folder filled with papers and photos toward him. "We have a witness who says they saw you running from the scene of the murder," the older detective said flatly, voice void of empathy. Malik's throat went dry. Running. That wasn't him. "I wasn't there at all." "You need to tell us the truth, Malik," the younger detective said, leaning forward slightly. "If you confess, it'll make everything easier. You could get a lighter sentence." Panic clawed at Malik's chest. Why would I confess to something I didn't do? But the pressure was crushing, the weight of their words threatening to break him. Hours passed in a blur. They repeated questions, twisted his words, showed him blurry photographs, trying to catch him in a lie. The cold room seemed to close in tighter with every minute. His hands shook uncontrollably, his vision blurred with exhaustion. At one point, they brought up a juvenile record from years ago, petty theft committed when he was just 15. The detectives used it like a weapon, painting a picture of a dangerous man who couldn't be trusted. Malik swallowed hard, trying to hold on to the truth. He whispered, "I'm innocent. Please, you have to believe me." But his words fell on deaf ears. The detectives remained unmoved, their faces impassive, like stone statues. Alone in the silence that followed, Malik's mind spiraled. His dreams of music, freedom, and a better life seemed to vanish behind cold steel bars and harsh fluorescent lights. The fear settled deep in his bones. What if no one would believe him? What if this nightmare never ended? At one point, Malik's cellmate, a gruff older man named Reggie, leaned over and said quietly, "Listen, kid, they don't care about your story. This system's built to break you." Malik felt tears sting his eyes. He clenched his fists. "No," he told himself. "I won't break." Outside, life carried on. People walked to work, cars honked, the city breathed, but Malik was trapped, a man caught in a web he never wove. As the night deepened, Malik closed his eyes, wishing for a miracle. He thought about his mother, how she'd prayed for him, how he needed her now more than ever. Malik's days in the holding cell blurred into one long nightmare. The cold concrete walls pressed in on him like a trap, and the flickering fluorescent light overhead buzzed relentlessly, marking the slow passing of time. Each tick of the clock was a thunderous echo in his mind. His life was unraveling, and fast. Despite the crushing weight of despair, Malik refused to give in. He replayed that night over and over in his mind, desperate to find something. Anything that could prove his innocence. His guitar, now locked away in a forgotten corner, felt like a distant memory, a dream fading further with every passing hour. Hope arrived in the form of a young public defender named Angela. She was assigned to his case after his family contacted a local legal aid organization. Angela was sharp-eyed, fierce, and unlike anyone Malik had met before. When she first walked into the interrogation room, Malik could see the exhaustion behind her eyes, but there was fire too. She looked at him and said, "Malik, I'm here to help. I believe we can prove you didn't do this." Those words sparked something inside Malik, a fragile flame of hope that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. Angela dug into the case with relentless determination. She pored over police reports, studied witness statements, and questioned the glaring holes in the investigation. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that the police had rushed to judgment, fueled by assumptions and a vague eyewitness description that barely matched Malik. Your description fits hundreds of people in this neighborhood, Angela said, shaking her head during one meeting. They grabbed the easiest target, Malik. We're going to fix this. One afternoon, Angela brought Malik to the station to review security footage from nearby cameras. They sat together in a small room, watching grainy video of the streets. From the night of the murder, Malik's heart raced as he watched himself walking calmly past the alley where the crime happened. The timestamp was clear. He was nowhere near the scene when the attack occurred. It's not much, but it's something, Angela said, her voice steady but tired. This footage could help establish your timeline. Even with evidence mounting in his favor, Malik knew the fight wasn't over. He felt the weight of prejudice in every interaction with law enforcement, in every whispered conversation he overheard from jail staff, in the cold stares from those who already judged him guilty. At night, the memories haunted him. He recalled his mother's warnings to be careful, to stay invisible to a system that seemed designed to see him as a threat. No matter what, the loneliness was crushing. Malik often lay on the thin jail mattress, clutching the faded photo of his mother and little sister, wishing he could protect them from the storm threatening to swallow him whole. He remembered the nights before his arrest, playing music in smoky clubs, the hopeful eyes of strangers who finally noticed his talent. Those moments felt distant now, swallowed by cold walls and harsh lights. But each morning, he woke with renewed determination. One day, Angela surprised him with a visit and some unexpected news. We found a new witness, Malik, someone who saw the real attacker. Malik's heart jumped. Who? What did they say? Angela leaned in, lowering her voice. They saw a man matching a different description, someone with a shaved head and a tattoo on his neck. It's nothing like you. For the first time since the nightmare began, Malik felt a flicker of relief. The real story was starting to come out. Still, Malik knew the road ahead was long and fraught with danger. The police department had already painted him as a criminal. Clearing his name wouldn't just mean proving where he was. It meant confronting a system that too often failed young, black men like him. He thought about his mother's face, worn with worry, his little sister's bright smile. How they would be hurt by the headlines, the whispers, the judgment. But Malik was ready. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to imagine a future beyond the cell walls. A future where his music could soar free, where he wasn't just a suspect, but a man with a story worth hearing. That night, as he lay on the hard mattress, Malik hummed a melody, a song of hope, pain, and resilience. It was the song of a man fighting to reclaim his life, one note at a time. He whispered softly to himself, I won't let this break me. The days dragged on with a weight that felt unbearable. Malik's world had shrunk to the cold, grey walls of his cell and the uncertainty that gnawed at his soul. But amid the darkness, a flicker of hope appeared, an unexpected ally whose fierce determination would change the course of his fight for justice. Her name was Serena Thompson, a young community activist, an investigative journalist known for her fearless pursuit of truth. She had heard whispers of Malik's arrest from locals, and something about his story stirred her deeply. Serena knew the too common pattern. a young black man quickly labeled guilty before the facts could be uncovered. After contacting Malik's family, Serena offered her help. Initially, his mother was hesitant, afraid that publicity might bring more harm than good. But Angela, Malik's public defender, convinced them that Serena's voice could be a powerful weapon. They agreed to let her in. Serena wasted no time. She wasn't content to report only what the police said. She dove headfirst into uncovering the truth. She interviewed neighbors who had been too scared to come forward, local shopkeepers who had seen suspicious activity, and even patrons of the Blue Note Club who could verify Malik's presence that night. One grey afternoon, Serena arrived at the detention center. Malik, gaunt and weary, hardly recognized the spark of life returning to his eyes when she walked in. She carried a notebook filled with questions and determination. Sitting beside him, she smiled gently. "I'm here because your story matters." "Malik," Serena said softly but firmly, "you're not alone in this fight." Malik felt a surge of hope he hadn't known in weeks. For the first time, someone outside those harsh prison walls believed in his innocence. Together, Serena and Malik pieced together a timeline that contradicted the police's rushed narrative. They discovered that many witnesses had been silenced, intimidated by officers or afraid of retribution. Slowly, the fog of fear began to lift. Then, a breakthrough came. A young woman named Tasha, who had stayed silent until now, courageously stepped forward. She described seeing a man matching the new suspect's description, a shaved head, a tattoo curling up his neck, lurking near the alley where Jacob Reynolds was murdered. She recalled his cold eyes and swift movements, nothing like Malik's calm demeanor. Tasha's words rang loud in Malik's mind. "He wasn't like you," she had said. "He was dangerous, and he had a purpose." Serena's articles began to spread through the community, stirring conversations and igniting questions. People who had accepted the police version started demanding answers. Vigils were held, candles flickering in the night as protesters carried signs that read, "Justice for Malik and stop the false arrests." Serena organized a community meeting in a small church hall near Malik's neighborhood. The room buzzed with nervous energy as people shared their fears and hopes. Malik's mother sat in the front row, clutching a worn prayer book, tears glistening in her eyes. At the meeting, Serena stood at the podium, her voice strong and unwavering. "This isn't just Malik's fight," she said, looking out over the crowd. "It's a fight against injustice, against a system that too often turns its back on those who need it most. Together, we can make a difference." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of support that filled Malik's heart with renewed courage. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Malik found strength in the growing support outside. Each letter Serena sent, every article published, every voice raised on his behalf became a lifeline. He was no longer invisible. The community was fighting with him, but the opposition was fierce. The police department dismissed the new witness's testimony as unreliable, clinging stubbornly to their version. They challenged every piece of evidence Angela and Serena brought forward, aiming to crush Malik's defense before the trial. Angela worked tirelessly, preparing for the courtroom battle that would decide Malik's fate. She studied every report, analyzed every statement, and built a case that could expose the truth. The trial date loomed ahead like a storm, threatening to tear everything apart. One quiet evening, Malik sat on the hard bunk of his cell. From his pocket, he pulled out a small notebook, the one he had carried everywhere before this nightmare began. His fingers traced the worn cover, and memories flooded back. Smoky clubs, cheering crowds, the sound of his guitar strings singing beneath his touch. With trembling hands, Malik opened the notebook and began to write. Words flowed from his heart. Path, pain, fear, hope, and determination. Each line was a battle cry, a promise to himself and the world. His song told the story of a man trapped by injustice but refusing to be broken, of a dreamer caught in a nightmare but still reaching for the light. In that moment, Malik made a silent vow. No matter what the outcome, he would keep fighting. Not just for himself, but for every person silenced, every voice ignored, every soul wronged. Because sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with fists or guns, but with truth, courage, and unyielding hope. And Malik was ready to sing that song loud and clear. The day of the trial arrived like a storm on the horizon, heavy, tense, and impossible to ignore. Malik sat in the courtroom, his hands resting tightly on his lap, heart pounding like a relentless drum. The sterile room buzzed with whispers and watchful eyes, some filled with sympathy, others brimming with judgment. As the judge called the courtroom to order, Malik's thoughts raced back over the past weeks, the arrest, the interrogations, the endless nights in that cold, unforgiving cell, the slow, painful fight to clear his name. Now, everything hinged on this moment. The weight of it threatened to crush him, yet he refused to break. Angela stood confidently by his side, clutching a thick folder packed with evidence. Across the room, the prosecution sat rigid, eyes sharp and faces set with determination to prove Malik's guilt. But Malik held fast to one unshakable truth. He was innocent. The trial began with opening statements. The prosecutor's voice was cold and accusing as he painted Malik as a dangerous man, a threat to society with a troubled past. He tried to convince the jury that Malik's previous mistakes made him capable of murder. But Angela's voice was different, warm, clear, and unwavering. She spoke directly to the jury, telling them the real story about Malik's life, a gifted musician who had never harmed anyone, a devoted son and brother who had been caught in the crossfire of a flawed system. She exposed the gaping holes in the police investigation, the rushed assumptions, the ignored evidence, and the newly uncovered witness testimony that pointed to a completely different suspect. One by one, witnesses took the stand. Tasha's testimony was heartfelt and steady as she recounted the terrifying night. She saw a man matching the description of the real attacker, a shaved head, a tattoo curling up his neck, moving with cold purpose near the alley where Jacob Reynolds was murdered. Her words painted a chilling picture far removed from Malik's gentle nature. The prosecution presented the so-called evidence, but it began to crumble under Angela's relentless questioning. Grainy security footage was played for the jury, clearly showing Malik walking peacefully on a distant street, nowhere near the crime scene at the crucial time. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom as the truth started piercing the thick veil of suspicion. Malik sat quietly, the heavy burden on his chest slowly easing. His gaze found his mother's in the gallery, her eyes brimming with tears of hope and pride. Her presence was a balm for his weary soul. The defense rested, and the prosecution's arguments faltered. The jury saw the cracks in the police's rushed story, the gaps, the false assumptions, the incomplete investigation. Then Malik was asked to speak. He stood, heart pounding, voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "I'm not a criminal," he said plainly, but with fierce conviction. "I'm a son, a brother, a musician. I've faced hardships, but I have never hurt anyone. I was not there when the crime happened. I was playing music, pouring my soul into my dreams. Someone wanted an easy answer, someone to blame without proof. I'm here because I want justice, not just for me, but for all who have been wrongly accused. His words echoed through the courtroom, filling the silence with raw honesty. After what felt like an eternity, the jury filed back into the room. Malik's heart pounded so loudly he feared it might drown out the judge's voice. The judge cleared his throat and read the verdict. Not guilty. A wave of relief and joy crashed over the courtroom. Malik's family rushed to his side, tears streaming freely as they embraced him tightly. Angela allowed herself a small smile, pride and exhaustion etched deeply on her face. Serena's relentless. Journalism had helped turn the tide, bringing Malik's story from shadows into the light. Outside the courthouse, the community gathered. Cheers and applause rang out, voices raised in celebration, signs waved proudly in the air. Justice for Malik, stop the false arrests, and truth will prevail. Malik raised his hand in a humble wave, the weight of the past months still heavy but softened by this moment of victory. It was more than just a win in court. It was a powerful statement that truth matters, that justice can be fought for, even when the system seems stacked against you. Malik knew the road ahead would still have challenges. The scars left by this ordeal would take time to heal. The system still needed change to prevent others from suffering as he had. But for now, he was free to breathe, to dream, and to play his music again. Later that evening, Malik sat on the steps outside a small music venue, guitar case resting. Beside him, the city's lights sparkled like stars around him, and the cool night breeze whispered promises of new beginnings. He took a deep breath and looked up at the vast sky. This is just the beginning, he whispered softly, fingers brushing the worn leather of his guitar case. Malik knew his voice would be heard now, not as a suspect, but as a man with a story worth telling, a man ready to turn pain into music and injustice into hope. And so, with a heart full of resilience and a soul ready to sing, Malik stepped forward into the light of his new life. Malik's story is more than just about one man falsely accused. It is a powerful reflection of a deeper, painful truth that many Black Americans face daily. Systemic racism and bias embedded within the justice system in the US. Countless innocent Black men and women are often judged guilty before a fair investigation begins. Assumptions based on skin color and stereotypes too often replace facts. Malik's wrongful arrest and the struggle to prove his innocence show how deeply prejudice can influence law enforcement and public opinion. But Malik's journey also teaches us about resilience, hope, and the power of community. It shows that even when the system seems stacked against you, courage, truth, and solidarity can shine through the darkest moments. Allies like Angela and Serena remind us that change requires brave voices willing to stand against injustice. This story urges us all to confront and dismantle racial bias, not just in the courts, but in everyday attitudes and systems. It's a call to listen carefully, question assumptions, and fight for a world where no one is judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Justice is more than a verdict. It's fairness, respect, and equal protection. Under the law, Malik's story is a reminder. Until we confront racism honestly, many will continue to suffer in silence. But through awareness and action, we can build a more just and compassionate society for all. If this story moved you, If it made you feel something real, don't let it stop here. At the US Black Stories, we don't just tell stories. We open doors into lives too often misunderstood, unheard, or unseen. Through fiction, we shine a light on the truths that shape Black experience in America. Stories of struggle, legacy, dignity, and transformation, and every story carries a message, a mirror, a lesson, a moment of empathy we all need. But here's the thing, these stories need you. They need listeners. They need voices to share them, reflect on them, and keep the conversation going. So, if you believe in the power of storytelling to spark change, if you want more narratives that challenge bias, uplift heritage, and teach respect, then this is your space. Subscribe to the US Black Stories today. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that just might change the way you see the world, and leave us a comment. What did this story make you feel? What did it teach you? Your voice matters here. The more we grow, the more stories we can share. And in a world filled with noise, we choose to tell the stories that matter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And most of all, thank you for believing that every voice, every life, and every legacy deserves to be heard.